All right. Hello, Northside. Welcome back to our Holy Week videos. I don't know. I almost said podcast. It's not really a podcast, but I'm here with Mike Ebrom, and it is Tuesday, April 15th of the Tuesday of Holy Week. So, Mike, how are you doing this morning?
Well, hello, David. I'm doing well today. This is really a great. I was honored when you sent me an email to ask me for an interview, and I actually it was a little bit on the. Can I do this? Can I interview with
Mm,
David Sessions, our preacher? And
yes.
a little bit of my my thought was I don't know if the words I say is something that would. Be impactful, but then some of what you had given me as far as instructions kind of helped me iron that out. That this is more conversational, and I
Yeah,
think I can talk to David in front of a
absolutely.
recording.
Absolutely. Yes. We're just actually going to ignore that this is recording and that people are overhearing our conversations.
Well,
That's really
that's
what we want to do here.
yeah, I think we can pull that off.
All right. I'm really good at ignoring things. So, Mike, tell me, your story's a little bit unique, at Northside. Tell me what growing up around Holy Week, growing up around Lent, moving towards Easter, what was that like for you?
Well, I have kind of two aspects of that that really came to me early on.
Mhm.
For some of the members at Northside that don't know, I have what I call a dual faith heritage. Um, um, I was raised in the Church of Christ, which my mom faithfully has attended her entire life. But my mom and dad got married, and my dad is a devout Catholic. And
Mhm.
so simultaneously, I was also raised going to Catholic Mass
Mhm.
and studying the catechism and going through some of the more traditional aspects of that faith heritage. And so
Mhm.
I kind of in shorthand say that I have a dual faith heritage. There's a little bit of a irreverent joke that if you get someone from the CFC and a devout Catholic in the same room together, it doesn't take long for them to try to convert one another. Um,
Sure.
However, my parents never really achieved that. They simply continued sharing their faith with each other
Mm,
and their children.
mm,
And that kind of gave me, well, to be frank, some challenges, some friction that a lot
sure.
of other Christians who don't have that as a challenge with having two
Mhm.
faith heritages presented to
Mhm.
them. Usually one wins out. And while I attend Northside Church of Christ, I also recognize that I have some unique positions or
Mm.
perspectives, rather, that some of our brethren just may not be aware of because they didn't grow up around it.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of almost sounds like a bilingual household, right?
Somewhat, yes.
Yeah.
That would be probably a real good analog for
Yeah.
describing some of the dynamic that happened there. But in that, I definitely am pretty well versed with the traditions of Holy Week.
Sure.
The traditions of Palm Sunday and
Yeah.
Ash Wednesday and the Holy Thursday and Good Friday. Those are all things that I was taught from childhood,
Yeah.
as well as I see how some of those things are very beneficial and have shaped me and my faith walk. Um, it like it's a good dynamic that um, that I have come to understand, and yet trying to replicate that in some of my
Mm,
exposure for my children is something that
yeah.
that I'm cognizant of.
Hmm.
Um, Trying to do that without creating tension
Hmm.
in my household is also something that I think about a lot. I can also
Hmm.
tell you that a big shift in my own life was when I got married to Christina.
Hmm.
Um, Christina's faith heritage was that of the Catholic Church.
Hmm.
Her family didn't, her parents didn't attend quite as faithfully as my dad did. And but she certainly was shaped through the traditions and a lot of the things that her grandmother imparted to her,
Sure.
who was very influential on the formation of her spiritual aspects in life. And
Yeah.
so we've actually had a lot of irreverently funny moments in our
Sure.
household of talking about things that we do during, um, for instance, the Lenten season, and some things that maybe those who come solely from a Church of Christ heritage are less familiar with. And
Sure.
so there are a lot of those aspects that kind of get a side eye glance
Sure.
between my wife and I.
So let me ask you this. It sounds like there's kind of just like you kind of described this tension. Not maybe not tension is not the right word, but bilingualness, right?
Right.
Do you feel like, did you feel then, do you feel now this like a need to like resolve those differences, or are you okay with them just kind of being different?
I I'm glad you I'm glad you asked me that question. To be completely frank, I hadn't really thought of that.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm laughing because I'm trying not to self-censor. I just want to be honest with you, David.
That's okay.
I have a favorite irreverent joke that I say, again, some of that side eye stuff with my wife is, and forgive me if you've heard this, but I often irreverently say I'm one confessional from being a full-fledged Catholic again.
Hmm.
And I what I mean by that is within the Catholic faith there are the sacraments that are presented, and
Hmm.
I'm not going to go into all of that, but those things are very pivotal within
Hmm.
the acceptance of following the tenets that are set out in the
Hmm.
Catholic Church. And that structure is one that I initially rejected as a
Hmm.
young person, as a adolescent in some of my
Hmm.
formative years. I kind of leaned more Church of Christ and leaning
Hmm.
into that heritage. I think some of that was a natural relational inclination that I had at the time. I saw that my relationship with my mom was emotionally more connected.
Hmm.
Not And as a young person, as a teenager, I didn't really have the wisdom or maturity to see that the connection that I had with my dad was also there. It just appeared differently. And now
Sure.
I can say absolutely naturally that's of
Yeah.
course that's going to be the case. I also think that I leaned a little bit more into my CFC heritage and exposure because of my connection with my maternal grandparents, and
Hmm.
that was one of those things that you don't really consciously make a choice of, well, I'm choosing this because of this relationship. I don't think that I had necessarily those conscious ideas. So when you ask me if that's something that I would resolve or maybe need
Hmm.
to resolve, um, yeah, I think I've been doing that, at least parts of that resolution for the rest of my adult life. I mean, to
Sure.
this day.
Yeah.
I, and I think that this piece falls into a broader conversation, that I've had with a lot of my Northside brothers and sisters, which is really finding um, the right place to both uh, celebrate the heritage that we have,
Yeah,
while not harshly excluding those who share a different heritage. It's
sure.
almost goes back to the analogy that you so aptly put up about being bilingual. I mean,
Yeah.
if one is bilingual, it's hard to ever say that you are going to exclusively speak or think in one language.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
it kind of has a real similar feel, and so for that, I can tell you there are a lot of things that um, I found kind of got brought with a prohibitive nature from CFC Heritage, like, oh, we don't do
Sure.
that. Well, why not?
Yeah.
Well, because that's, I mean, frankly, because that's something Catholics do. Well, why
Hmm.
not?
Yeah.
Was
Right.
the well, why not was a huge question for me, and
Sure.
again has been and continues to this day.
Sure.
And I, again, it's not to be harsh with anyone, but rather to say, well, let's explore that, or what is the purpose of either a prohibition or a permission for something that someone may have, or someone may think
Hmm.
about. I mean, um, sometimes a lot of what we do, and I'm I think that I'm pretty good at pointing this out, but
Yeah.
we all have those blind spots, which I'm very painfully aware of. Is sometimes we just do what we like or know
Hmm.
or are comfortable with, and
Hmm.
I certainly fall into aspects of that. Um, and I don't ever want to come across as being harsh to someone that just either has never been exposed to what I've been exposed to. I mean,
Yeah.
truthfully, a big portion of me was just feeling put upon as a young person, as a teenager. I felt actually like I just wish my parents would would go to the same church, or I just wish my parents
Mm.
would not, you know, have this. It felt like um, there was a schism there, and it wasn't.
Sure.
I think the schism was more what was focused upon, and I have stepped from adolescence through young adulthood
Yeah.
into the middle where I'm at right now, and now
Yeah.
realize that a lot of times you can focus on a rather your perspective, and what you focus on often becomes the emphasis. So whether you focus
Yeah. For
on
sure.
the differences, or you can focus on some of the similarities, it may
Yeah.
actually change how you interact. And I'm finding that more and more, even where I'm
Yeah.
at today.
Yeah, that's really well said. And so, I think one of the things I've really liked about Holy Week is it focuses me. It puts my focus on what matters, which
Oh,
is
absolutely.
I'm kind of walking this journey, walking this week with Jesus as he goes to the cross. So, Mike, I asked you to read ahead on Mark 13. And we just want to know, like, as you read that, I'm going to kind of just uh, go over real quick what Mark 13 is about. Jesus has come on Sunday into the city of Jerusalem. Lindsey Perkins led us yesterday really well through the conflict, initial conflict on Monday with the temple and the withering of the fig tree. That fig tree is going to show up again in chapter 13. Mark goes back to it three times, or goes visits. He talks about it three times. But here in chapter 13, we've got the destruction of the temple foretold, the persecution foretold, desolation of sacrilege, the coming of the Son of Man, and then the lesson of the fig tree. So, in that, what jumped out at you? What caught your eye? What'd you notice, and what was interesting to you?
Well, that's kind of a mouthful there.
Yeah.
But well, so In reading the passage again,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about there's actually a pronounced um, transition through
Mm,
all of what Jesus says.
mm,
And I wanted to also point out um, initially at the start of Mark 13, it's some of the disciples. We don't get all of their names, and we don't even get an
mm-hmm.
exact
Mm-hmm.
number when they say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, Lord, or Rabbi, look at this place. This is amazing. Look
Yeah.
at these large
Yeah.
stones. And Jesus is like, not one of these stones is going to be left
Mm-hmm.
standing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of see this distillation of, well, there's uh, forgive me, but I think in these terms of it's Jesus's homeboys. It's his inner circle, the
Mm-hmm.
circle of trust when he gets Peter, Andrew, James, and John, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, Lord,
Yeah.
um, now that we've got you away from this other crowd of the rest of the disciples, give us the inside track. And
Right. What's really going on here? Yeah.
when is this really going to happen?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and for me, I always try to relate to where Jesus is, and I always want to insert myself in the story. I
Mm,
sometimes, I don't know, I feel like I relate to the Apostle Peter in a lot of ways. Maybe it's
mm,
because he's the guy that's quick to pull out a sword and cut off the ear of the high priest. Anyway, maybe he's got a warrior spirit, and maybe that's what
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
kind of keying in on.
Mm-hmm.
But I certainly always draw myself in that inner circle of Jesus's homeboys. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I would want to call Jesus out and be like, "Hey, Lord, can you please, like, what's the real deal? When is this actually
Yeah.
happening?" And
Yeah.
so uh, somehow I relate to those guys a lot,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I want to get that further answer. Well, then I don't I think I'm still relating to them whenever he starts giving them this distilled answer of, but it seems to have changed. It seems to he's now not just talking about this event which he's prophesying on, which was the destruction of the second temple,
Mm-hmm.
which does happen later. It happens after
Mm-hmm.
his death, burial, and resurrection.
Yep.
Um,
About 80, 70.
Yeah, about 80
Mm-hmm.
70 was when the Romans came through and
Mm-hmm.
put down that rebellion.
They were
Um,
tired of this stuff. Yeah.
right. And it's sometimes governments do those kind of things,
That's right.
and that's where things like, hey, the guy that's up on top of the roof shouldn't go back into
Yeah.
the house. It almost has a
Mm.
sense of like the house is on fire. Well, what do you run back into the house for? Well, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's when the language about, oh, yeah, if you are here, you better run to the hills. Uh,
Yeah.
it's gonna be terrible for the pregnant women and for those who have nursing babies. This is gonna be bad. Um,
Yeah.
and so when that starts getting said, and when it says that this generation, meaning all the people alive today, are not going to all be dead before this happens,
Right. Right.
that that definitely that's a very pointed pin in that
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. This is an escalation, right? In the
Right,
story, like things are getting serious.
right. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
can look at world events today and things like that, but
Mm-hmm.
if somebody said to you or I that the city where we live, whether it's a monument or whether it's a large building or whether it's something in our neighborhood, that this is going to be destroyed, I
Yeah.
definitely would have all of my antenna up. I definitely would be,
Yeah.
hey, Lord, when is this going to happen? Like, what do
Yeah.
I need to
It's
prepare
almost
for?
like a whiplash moment. Like
Right.
the country boys from Galilee have come to the big city with their teacher and they're like, look at these buildings. This is New York City. This is crazy. And then it's like uh the record scratching, Jesus saying, nah, well, none of this is going to be here.
Yeah.
Um, so let me ask you this, Mike, because I think you brought up some things so fascinating, so important to the Gospel of Mark. Is why do you think that's important? Why doesn't Jesus just let them be blissfully ignorant? Uh, the the Mark is written his gospel, we were fairly certain, after the destruction of Jerusalem, after the destruction of the temple. So the people reading the first draft of this are like, yeah, that's what happened. We know that's what happened. So I'm kind of asking you to put two lenses on here. One is both the story itself. Why do you think Jesus just doesn't let his homeboys, if you call them, just be blissfully ignorant? But then also the second lens is for the first audience of Mark's gospel. What would that have done for them? Like what,
Well,
you know,
I think a huge portion of that is really in the second transition, because I think that he
mm,
transitions again. So where I see this is when he talks in verse 21 and following, he's saying,
mhm,
hey, whoa, there's going to be some people that are here to
yep,
deceive, and there's going to be some
for sure.
false messiahs, and there's
Hmm.
going to be all of these things during that time. There's going
Hmm.
to be a lot that comes down the pipe. But he's saying, I'm saying these things to you so that
Hmm.
nobody leads you astray.
Right,
I'm
right. There's going to
saying
be people
these
that are going to
things to
try to
you,
capitalize on the disaster.
right, so that you
Yep,
can remember and say, wait, he told us all of these
that's
things.
right. That's right.
And,
Yeah.
and so I see there's, in this aspect, there's utility in what
Mm,
he's saying. Um, he's trying to build that, and the only way that he can build that continuity is by telling them something that's going to happen in the future. If they had in their mind, or even if he didn't steal their resolve
hmm.
through giving them this prophecy,
Hmm.
then the idea could have been, well, yes, he died, and yes, he was buried and resurrected, but what good is it if all the people who know about this
Hmm.
are destroyed?
Yeah.
And I think that he's giving them some information. It's kind of that need to know information.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that in my realm of, it may be
Sure.
unclassified, but it's for official use only, and that's where um this is, or law enforcement sensitive for official use only. I get those bulletins all the time, and so that may be stuff that might happen, maybe
Yeah.
stuff that we're afraid would happen, or maybe
Hmm.
stuff that we need to go and stop from happening.
Hmm.
But in this, Jesus gives the inner circle, that clue that he says,
Hmm.
hey, this is so that you don't freak out about it. This is so that you
Sure.
remember this is going to happen. And
Yeah.
so I think the utility of that is to set up that the tribulation they're going to suffer here is the beginning of what becomes the disbursement. And so
Yeah.
that's, I mean, go into all the earth is, we
Yep.
know that his words about the Great Commission were what
Hmm.
he told that same group of guys. Well,
Hmm.
what exactly is going to compel me to leave my home, or leave where all my family is, or leave?
May not have a choice.
Right. Well, it becomes more evident when you don't have a
Hmm.
choice.
Hmm.
Um, if I had to get up and move from San Antonio, Texas, leave my
Yeah.
beloved Texas. This
Hmm.
is my hometown. But if
Right.
I didn't have a hometown to be in, or where my hometown is no longer
Yeah.
livable,
Yeah.
that might change things if I were
Yeah.
there. if that
Right.
was the role that I was filling.
Yeah.
Um, a- and yet at the same time, I see that this is something that he's saying kind of as a transitional piece because he doesn't stop there. He gives one more
Hmm.
distillation,
Right.
and that's where this passage is like really it's like being standing on the high dive basically of
Hmm.
you know if you jump you're gonna go deep.
Yeah. Wow. What a good image. Yeah. If you take that step of faith, you're gonna go pretty far down. So tell me, because yesterday Lindsay and I talked about this fig tree. She has a fig tree that does not bear fruit, and she shot her Zoom video in front of that. What do you think about this? He comes back to the fig tree a third time. What do you make of that?
um you know I wish I was a little more versed in fig trees. I
Ah,
don't know if Lindsay's horticultural experience could lend me
yeah.
some perspective. Um, I I don't actually know, David.
That may not
and
be a fair, because I only asked you to read this chapter. I didn't ask you. I'm realizing I didn't ask you to read the chapter 11 where it comes up. But
well,
I think go ahead.
I just think that when we're talking about different levels, trees bear fruit in their right time,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
some trees are barren; they don't even bear fruit at all.
Hmm.
My background knowledge of the fig tree was that it didn't have any. It didn't have
That's
any
right.
figs, and Jesus
That's
was.
right.
This always strikes me as an odd one because it's like, well, but was it the time for that tree to be in fruit? Um, uh, it kind of strikes me as, I mean, there's another passage that is told about a fig tree
Hmm.
where Jesus gives a parable,
Hmm.
and a master says of his orchard, basically, this one's not no good, cut it down. And
Yeah.
he's got a servant that says, whoa, 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 let's let me put in the effort to get this what it needs, and
Hmm.
let's come back in a season, and then if it's not doing what it ought to do,
Yeah.
it should be destroyed. But
Right.
if not, if perhaps the patience and the long suffering that we offer and the additional expenditure, the additional resources uh,
Yeah.
provides out, then perhaps it will bear the fruit that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if that's mixing the two
Yeah.
parables, but
Well, I mean, that's the fun thing about reading a story that comes out of a culture where almost everyone is a farmer or involved in agricultural of some ways. These metaphors tend to overlap. No, I think you're right on, and I think along with the destruction of the temple and the coming of the time, this fig tree becomes in Mark's gospel this metaphor for how are people responding to Jesus's message that the kingdom of God
yeah,
is near.
yeah,
And I don't know if fig trees have free will. Jesus seems to act like the fig tree is deciding not to bear fruit. But we all know people who hear the message and do nothing or retreat to rules-based religion rather than responding to the kingship of Jesus. And so I guess this will be the last question I want to throw out at you, and it's kind of related to this is, as you hear this urgency that you just spoke so well about this Jesus ratcheting up the narrative here. The narrative is getting intense. You you messaged, your career, you referenced your career of getting a text about something that might happen. that feels like the right tension that's happening here.
Yeah.
You know, Jerusalem's getting tense and Jesus is making it tense. So what is, as we're living in the week of good of Holy Week, as we're reading this, what do you take from that? What is something that Mike Ebrom wants to hold on to uh, as we live in this story?
Well, the first thing that I think about from our passage here, but it
Mhm,
absolutely dives into answering the question, is also in here. Jesus tells these inner sanctum, these guys,
mhm,
which ultimately reflects that he's telling directly me and you.
yeah.
I mean,
Hmm.
if he were talking to us, he'd be saying the
Hmm.
same. If we
Hmm.
came to him at the same time, he'd say these
Hmm.
same things.
Hmm.
When he says, "Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away,"
Yeah.
we have the transcendent God, the
Hmm.
transcendent God
Hmm.
clothed in human form with the same thoughts, fears, feelings, hungers,
Hmm.
hot and cold, um, facing temptations, facing each trial that we would have, and yet he's doing it not of his own accord, but he's actually living here with the purpose that he's going to get to at the end of the week.
Yeah.
And man, that's one that starts me on a bit of an emotional response because
Yeah.
um, he's not doing this because he needed to live here, and he's not doing this. He's not anticipating what's going to happen um, at the end of the week
Hmm.
for his own sake.
Right.
Uh, I look forward into I look forward into those moments on the cross
Hmm.
when he says, "Forgive them; they don't know what they're doing."
Yeah. That's right.
And
Yeah, Mike, that's really well said. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, that's where I end up seeing this entire passage, but where it falls into Holy Week, where it falls into history, how
Hmm.
that history affects my life is one that we know that the story doesn't end there either. It's not
Yeah.
it doesn't end on the cross. It
Hmm.
doesn't
Hmm.
end behind a stone door closing a cave.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's not, again, none of that was for himself, but
Right.
even then we have this imagery that he tells those close disciples that, hey, in the same way, um, that the son is coming back,
Hmm.
that he's not going to leave us alone either. This is not just
Hmm.
a one and done and then I'm going to press play and autopilot the rest of this earthly realm, and what
Right.
happens. There's some more explanation that he gives the close disciples, that he says it's like a man leaving for a journey,
Yeah.
and he goes. He doesn't. I mean, back in the days before telecommunication, and there was no Zoom, there was
Hmm.
no cell phones or anything like that. When the master of the house left and said, "Take care of things until I get back,"
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
didn't know when he was going to get back. And so in
Right.
that, there's both a call to action, a call for
Mm.
readiness, that
Hmm.
I clearly hear, that yes, he's already done it. He's accomplished it. His grace
Hmm. Hmm.
happened. Um, I receive his grace. I'm the beneficiary of that. And because of that, it calls me to be seeking him waiting,
Yeah.
anticipating his return, and doing all of
Yeah.
the other things, not because I'm compelled to or because that's
Yeah.
what I'm doing to earn the grace,
Yeah.
but rather seeing that his grace has done these things in me. I can't help but want to be ready. And I can't help but want
Yeah.
to do the things that he's laid out for us.
Yeah.
And for
I'm
me
hearing you saying,
specifically,
yeah, because he entered into the human story, it makes you want to live a better story. It makes
absolutely.
you want to be the modern day chapters of the story that Jesus stepped into, because he stepped into a real world, because it's not just a fairy tale, but that he came. And I love the way you're talking about, boy, just the earthiness of the Gospel of Mark, that Jesus felt these things, and Jesus um, was experiencing the tension in that city
Yeah.
this week. And so then, I love the way you said it, so that it prepares us, it compels us to be people who are ready. Um, Not because God depends on us, but because the battle's already won. Let's go live that story.
Right.
Let's go live the triumphant
Right.
story. Yeah. Well, my friend, I think you and I could talk all day, but I we unfortunately have to come to a close. Thank you for being a part of this first year of thinking about Holy Week here at Northside, and living into that. And thank you for the way that you and your whole family love Northside so well. We are really grateful for the Ebrams.
I appreciate you, David. Thanks for the opportunity. And I certainly am thankful for the brothers and sisters that
Yeah,
we are sharing this moment with,
yeah.
and thank you for your insights and the things that you share with me.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. And Northside, have a great week. We will see you hopefully a Good Friday. Have a great rest of the week.